thank you for joining us for what I hope is going to be a very interesting set of discussions around AI and the stewardship of science. Now, I presume that the reason that you're here is that you have actually read the overview or the outline of what our objectives are this afternoon, the rationale for picking this topic. A very, very quick recap for those who haven't. It's a reflection of the way we manage the upstream and downstream of science is changing in an age of digital technologies and using AI as a kind of case point. So just to underline, we're not going to spend 60 minutes talking exclusively about AI. This is about the broader system, the way in which science is developed, proposed, evaluated, assessed. That's sort of the upstream side. We're going to talk a bit about the information systems, the way that digital technologies are changing the way that we manage science, data, projects, knowledge management and sharing, and more. And we're going to talk a bit about the downstream part of science. How can this advent of the digital age change the way that we define and also the pathways to amplify the impact of scientific outcomes, research outcomes for society? Okay, so that's the basic framing of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to have an interactive discussion up here among the panel members, and we're going to give you the opportunity to ask questions or make comments as well. But we've got 60 minutes, and so we're going to push on. First of all, I'm very, very pleased to introduce our 5 speakers today. We've deliberately tried to make sure that we have a cross-section of perspectives and responsibilities, because this isn't a conversation that is limited to academia. It's not limited to publishing. It's not limited to policy. It's at the interface between all of these. All kinds of scientific organizations have a role to play in rethinking the way that we manage science and ensure that its outcomes have benefits for society. Okay? So as people take their final seats, I'm going to introduce our panel from left to right. François Bertrand, Vice President for Research and Innovation at Polytechnique Montreal. Next to him, Nick Fowler, Chief Academic Officer for Elsevier. Hilary Hanaho, the Secretary General of the Research Data Alliance. Liviu Stierbat, formerly in Executive Vice President Vestager's cabinet, but the new Head of Unit for Industry 5.0 and AI in Science in DG Research at the Commission. And last but by no means least, Tiina Kuppila-Rantala, who's the Vice Managing Director at CSC IT Centre for Science in Finland. So a very warm welcome to you all. Thank you for being here. We tried to come up with a sort of provocative question in framing this session. Do we need a new blueprint, the stewardship of science? So we're going to start off to make sure that you all get a minute or two to give first thoughts, get everybody involved in the discussion, and then we'll move on to some of the more cross-cutting themes for this. But I'm going to go from right to left. Tiina, you get to kick us off. Do we need a new blueprint, and why?
I would say yes and no. Yes, yes, because of course it's very true that we have these new digital technologies that are advancing very fast, and they are reshaping the way how we do research very rapidly. So in that respect, yes, we do need some redefining of our stewardship models. But then, on the other hand, the very fundamental core principles, how we actually do science and what are the fundamentals of doing science, they are still the same. We need to respect the research ethics, code of conduct there. We need to honor the notions of accuracy, quality, validity of research results, and in that respect, nothing has been changed.
Very good. Okay, Liviu, let's ask you next.
It's hard to top that, a yes and a no. I would tend to agree, but to shift the dial a bit, I would be more towards the yes, because I see this and the sort of reflections that we've started at the European Commission on exactly this very point, and thanks, by the way, for organizing this session, because it's really helping us as well push forward our thinking. The reflections and the early ideas that we hear point to a rather radical change, right, that we're on the cusp of right now. And it's not just the digitalization that happens slowly, it's not just the online interaction, it's not just the focus on data and the digital aspects of research, but it's something that cuts closer to the heart of what science actually is. And just before coming here, I had with our team a conversation about this, whether the science that robot scientists, the sort of 2050 goal that the Turing Institute set, is that actually science? Because it's not really about understanding. So we got very deep and very philosophical. So I think we're in a situation where we do need this blueprint, because it's not just more of the same, or it's not even just a sort of trend. There's a cutoff. So I think we're really on the verge. And I'll close by pointing to a quirk from an earlier session in the conference from the Max Planck, the gentleman,
Patrick Kramer.
right, who said that he takes issue with requests for roadmaps when there are no roads, and I think blueprint is a better term in this situation. We're really pushing the frontiers. We're really charting the unknown, and it's great that we get to do it together with the reflections and with a firm footing in the past and the tradition and the principles that have guided us so far in the scientific discovery. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. Hilary, your thoughts?
So I would say an evolution, or even almost a revolution. I think we come from a place with some fairly excellent basics. I mean, I won't go into what Tina said about the science, but let's look at some of the, how would we say, policies and practices that have been put in place already. Things like around open science, fair data, codes of conduct, and research assessment. So they are, I believe, all very supportive of this new challenge that we have to face around AI and how we're going to deal with that. So that's why I would say an evolution. They are things that I think they should be geared up. I believe that the part, of course, that's most difficult is building the trust. And trust in terms of people, of course, and the connections, but also allowing people to have the skills and necessary, equipment and knowledge to support. And there are many facets of that. We can talk about it, I'm sure, later. But also trusted, if you like, technology, trusted, so software, and then, of course, trusted and quality data, which is my field. And then also the global aspect. So, standards help a lot in that. So if I were to say a blueprint, I would like to see those ingredients in this blueprint.
Excellent. Nick, what would you like to share?
So I'm with Hilary. Not only in our pens do we share the same pens, but also evolution rather than revolution. So I come at this from the perspective of Elsevier. So we're a publisher, an analytics company. We support the stewardship of science because we publish over 600,000 new articles each year that are peer-reviewed. And we also, of course, provide data and analytics to help support decision-making. And like other publishers and providers, we're already using a lot of AI. For example, researchers use AI-based tools to make sense of the unfamiliar terms or read summaries of wide bodies of research to give evidence to inform their research. We use AI to filter over 3 million article submissions that we get each year to detect plagiarism or fabricated data or image sets. And we also use AI in assessment tools. And overall, we'd say the system actually does perform remarkably well. So research by the Economist Impact shows that peer review is the top driver in trust. The 2024 Edelman Barometer says that people trust scientists to tell them the truth about new innovations and technologies more than any other professional body. And of course, the COVID vaccine, the fact it was rolled out and saved 14 million lives is itself an indication of a well-functioning system. But of course, that system is under pressure. We're seeing massive rises in the numbers of falsifications, image manipulation, fabricated articles, and Pew Research is showing that trust in research is actually dropping 16 points in the last couple of years. So overall, I'd say AI is potentially can strengthen the current information system, while at the same time it's the enabler of those things that are attacking the same system. So on the one hand, it's a force for good. Its innovations turbocharge the labor-intensive human-based processes that we have, and yet in the hands of bad actors or just poor executors, it can be a force for bad and pollute and manipulate the system. So I'd say in its simplest, AI is really the three things: content, technology, intent. If any one of those three things fail, if you have dirty content, faulty technology, bad intent, then the whole system gets polluted and fails. It's ultimately, it's a mirror of us, right? We created it for us, and it's really our own digital mirror. And so that's why it's so important that we actually apply a principles-based approach to adopting AI to make sure that the forces for good outweigh those bad. Look forward to talking more about those.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, Francois.
Before answering your question, I'd like to put things in perspective. I come from Montreal, so North America. So over the past few years, one thing I'd like to say here is that Montreal, École Polytechnique of Montreal and other universities, we've been instrumental in transforming the city of Montreal into a world-renowned, I think, if I may say so, world-renowned global hub concerning the development of AI-based technologies. And of course, that's been done with, we're backed by our government, of course, but that was done also in collaboration with more than 100 companies of various sizes. And that's 6 or 7 years ago. And the first thing that we did is that we released the so-called Declaration of Montreal for the development of a responsible AI. Okay, and that was like 6 or 7 years ago. And that declaration has been signed by many organizations since then. And I'd like to refer to what Herman Hauser said this morning when he used ChatGPT as an example to just illustrate how quick and how fast things are actually progressing right now when it comes to AI innovation. ChatGPT was engineered, was developed, was released as an end-use product in a matter of months, okay? And we didn't have a crystal ball, we're not soothsayers, like 6 years ago. But we had the hunch that innovation and AI, things were going to speed up, exponentially. And that example that Herman gave us this morning speaks volumes about the necessity, the urgency to have a collective reflection and to, I guess, also work on the maybe co-construction of ethical guidelines that would sort of frame, the development of AI tools. So I will stop here.
Okay, well, I know there's plenty more to be said on this later. So we're going to start with the policy perspective in terms of the panel discussion. I mean, Liv, you have, I think, a wonderful job in the fact that you have a new unit, right? You're not just taking over from somebody else. But I think the creation of this unit is also a reflection of the fact that the Commission sees systemic issues that will need to be managed. It's not just a peripheral or a marginal thing, right? And that's in terms of not just the volume of applications that you will get, just as Elsevier is getting this tsunami of contribution or content. It's also the evaluation process, historically human-centric, selective, excellence-focused, peer-review-driven, but we're in a new reality, I think. So what are the key issues that you're now working on? You've scratched the surface in opening comments, but what's the key things that you're trying to think about now in terms of the policy position and the actions for the way forward?
So we are really ourselves only scratching the surface right now. We're really cognizant of something that we're on the verge of something big. That's why we've dedicated a team. That's why we have the resources to start this reflection. That's why we're starting conversation as well with a lot of peers, a lot of large organizations, some of them very data-centric, some of them very technology oriented, that have already dealt with this. We're really focusing in the early stages of this exploration on the scientific disciplines that have, like computational in their title or data-driven, because they are the ones that have been dealing with this, have been going to the soothsayers earlier than some of the other disciplines. But some of the trends that emerge, some of the rewards that can be gleaned on the horizon are what's already said here. It's an amplifier, it's a mirror, it's really an accelerator for the good and for the bad. So in terms of the worries that we have, I will not go into the ethics, I will not go into the development of AI itself or really very technocentric concerns, but on the applications in science. One of the things that we have as a mandate, and we've heard actually the previous session was about this, in Europe and as policymakers is to make sure that we valorize all of the knowledge in all of the communities, in all of the countries that are part of the European Union and beyond. And that means, in our jargon, it's called widening. It means sort of leveling up, making sure that partnerships unlock excellence everywhere it is. And we see AI and the new technologies around it as a potential solution to this problem, but also as something that could make matters worse. So you could see basically the excellent leaders going even further, whereas the ones that are lagging already now getting left further behind. And that's something that's, that we need to address, and as policymakers and sort of public interest actors, we have a duty to address. The other thing that we're really struggling with now is trust, and that is very, very important, and a lot of the panelists mentioned this. Really trying to preserve the trust that science enjoys currently, and that is also, you could go towards more trust or less if you get swamped in fake journals, or noise. And then maybe the last point that I wanted to raise here is, in terms of the blueprint and going forward, what does the new technology mean for scientific infrastructure? I think in the next session we'll be talking about synchrotrons and particle accelerators, but these models, these foundation models for AI, are emerging as the next frontier in research infrastructure. Are we in the public sector going to build that? Is it something that we're going to team up with the private sector, or are we going to just sort of repurpose things that are developed commercially for applications in companies and sort of, as I say, pick off the crumbs off the table of the corporate world and bring that as a sort of beggar's banquet kind of analogy? So that's also somewhere where we can intervene. We can fund the development of these models for science. We can better equip scientists, and we can get them to work together across disciplines with AI scientists and domain scientists in teams that will help both. I'll stop here because it's really, as I said, just scratching the surface, but happy to hear also other views because we're at a moment where we desperately need them.
Okay, thank you, Liviu. I do have one very quick follow-up question. It actually ties back into the roundtable discussions we had at the end of November on generative AI and its impact on science. And part of those discussions were about the potential opportunity landscape for research and innovation policy, or even industry policy, to prioritize the public development of AI to tackle specific scientific issues, challenges, domains, and so forth, rather than just trying to play catch-up with big US tech giants and the models that they already have on the market. Is this also part of your thinking at the moment, or is that something that you will come to gradually as you deal with some of the other big questions?
Absolutely, and the catch-up metaphor is probably even better suited. For sure, that is one of the conversations we're having. We are discussing with the European Molecular Biology Lab. They were also on the agenda. They're also at the forefront of this. They've worked with Google and AlphaFold, DeepMind's AlphaFold, and that we see that as a possible model to follow up, a team up of public infrastructure and private excellence for mutual benefit. So yes, indeed, that's on our mind.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, Liviu's talked about infrastructure and trust, and for Elsevier, that's an existential question, Nick. Right? I mean, this challenge of ensuring in a new, fast-evolving digital space, how can we ensure reliability and trust in the information systems and the support systems that underpin scientific enterprise in all different kinds of environments? How do you see, or what do you think are the critical success factors for ensuring the highest possible levels of trust and reliability?
Well, I come back to the three things that I said. If you boil it down to its essence, maybe oversimplifying, I see AI as being content, technology, intent. All three things need to be clean in order for AI to be a force for good. So the role of publishers, peer review, is really ensuring trusted content. So that's where we do screening of the tsunami, as you described it. The 3 million manuscripts that we get, within that tsunami, there are fabricated articles, there are manipulated images. There are fabricated data sets. There are articles that have been generated purely for the purpose of selling authorship to somebody. So we need to be able to filter those out. And then we need to enable the editorial, the human factor, to function so that that which gets through is actually trustworthy. So that's a fundamental bedrock of content. Technology, the algorithms that are used, we co-develop with the community that we serve. We try to minimize bias. We're transparent about how the algorithms are being used. We are ensure that we can explain what we're doing and why we're doing it. So that's how we're working to ensure that the technology part is sound. And then the intent is we exist to further science, to enable science to have benefit on society. So that's how we approach it, and that's what our peers are doing as well. To get to the point about, you just mentioned at the end there to Olivia, a question about how AI can be used for policy advice. So that's actually something we are working on. We have an experiment with University College London, and we just launched a month ago Scopus AI. So it takes the world's abstracts, the world's largest database of publications and citations that are peer-reviewed, and mines that to say essentially what is the policy what is the consensus on, for example, lithium batteries, and what are the implications for Europe of what we know scientifically about lithium batteries. So that's a good example where the content is clean, it's peer-reviewed content in Scopus. The technology is basically mining what does the literature say, what does the science say, and the intent is help summarize in an objective way to inform policy. So that's an example, I think, of how all three factors can come together to preserve that trust element that you're talking about.
Excellent, thank you. So a little later, we're going to touch on the question of impact, right? A bit more on the downstream side, but trusted content, Hilary, it's kind of your area, right? I mean, data being the lifeblood of science, there's a vast amount of knowledge being generated by science these days with advanced digital technologies, but also with the information systems that allow its rapid, if not instantaneous, sharing across all different parts of the world. So when you put your Research Data Alliance hat on and you think about the stewardship of science, scientific insight and knowledge, what do you see as the critical issues or the steps that need to be taken to ensure this trust and reliability going forward?
Thanks. If I may, I'll just explain that the Research Data Alliance is a bottom-up, community-driven organisation of over 14,000 data professionals from 151 countries across the globe. So when I speak, if you like, with their voice. And a recent article in Nature, written by one of my colleagues, and the title was "Garbage In, Garbage Out." And I think that sums it up. Particularly for my community, in the sense of the quality, the provenance, the certification, the reproducibility are really, and then of course the transparency and the openness are really fundamental. I mean, getting it right, that's what the Research Data Alliance does across all different types of disciplines, but getting it right in understanding how does that particular, if you like, domain or challenge in that domain, where are we structuring the data, and et cetera. But I think what's really important is that this is a challenge that everybody has a role to play in finding the solution to. So, and we should always make sure that in whatever framework program, if it be it in Europe or be it anywhere else, that all the stakeholders are involved. We're particularly, I think, insistent on that in RDA. So if we take, for example, the quality, the provenance, the certification aspect, the funders, and I don't want to pick on the European Commission, but I mentioned it before, they have this wonderful open science policy. We have to abide by FAIR principles, but are we checking boxes? I mean, how is that actually being checked, that it's done? So who are the experts supporting the European Commission to actually make sure that that is being done? So in the future, I think that we should keep an eye on that. It's not enough to say that we're doing open science. The publishers, they, have data availability statements, are not, I don't think, not mandated, not all anyway, but they have a very important role to play as well to ensure the quality and the provenance of the data. They are the real connectors with the researchers and the scientists, yes? They're the people that really should be at the table in all these discussions. And they can help as well in making sure that they are using certified data repository, so it's not garbage in and therefore garbage out. Yeah. And the academic, the research performing organizations, they too, I mean, it's challenging, it's expensive, it's costly, we understand, but it's important that there are guidelines and best practices and support in place. The skills required in some countries or some institutions, it's easier to, hire people. In others, the researchers are tasked to do it themselves. But, they do use the statistic. I don't know how valid it is again today, but that 80% of their time is done data housekeeping, cleaning, wrangling, and the other 20% if they were to follow open science practices. They need to spend 100% of their time on research. So, and I think that all of those stakeholders and many others, by working together, we need to build this trust. And there's a lot of work going on. But then the other point is it must be global. Yeah. So we had the long conversation about, who's in, who's out, who's not. I really believe that we must be very careful with AI. We must be very careful now that we don't increase the digital divide, that we don't, the Global South, they have less resources. There's some amazing work going on down there, but we really need to find a way. I'm not suggesting any solution, but I am saying that we should be very careful because science is global and the collaboration can, do lots for it. So I'll stop there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Hilary. So before we move on to Francois, I just wonder, are there any further comments or insights that people want to add regarding this data, the content? I mean, we're coming up on the 10th year anniversary of the FAIR principles, which were obviously conceived in a time where mainstream advanced digital technologies weren't the reality in which we live. Do we think that there's a new iteration of FAIR that will be needed, or just very good curation and precision moving forward? So, Livia, you first, perhaps? Tina, if you'd like to add as well.
An insight, I mentioned this in a very sort of humble way, that we're learning and we're exchanging and finding out, and also a testament to our ignorance. We discovered recently when talking to Elixir, which is a distributed infrastructure focused on the life sciences, that they had proposed a few years ago a new set of principles with a similar acronym. It's called DOME, I believe, that focuses on because they're in computational biology, so they've really grappled with this kind of technology and the caveats that come with it, which focuses on the models themselves. So they see this as the next iteration. It was open science. You had to publish your data, then you have to publish your software, but now you need to publish your model, the algorithm that you ran the data on. And there's all sorts of next frontiers on this, because you need to archive these models so that you can you can replicate experiments down the line. If let's ChatGPT 3.5 somehow disappears and a lot of science has been done with it, how will you replicate those experiments? This kind of thinking. So it harks back to your first question of evolution. We have this trend, so that's the next frontier, but we really need to get to that.
Perfect. Hilary, and also Tina, if you want to add anything, or Nick.
Just really quickly about the principles. So FAIR, yes. CARE, actually, are the CARE principles. So they came after the FAIR principles, and they say you should be, you care to be fair. And they're very important principles globally, but also in particular parts of Europe, they are particularly important for the indigenous communities. So it's control, authorization, respect and ethics, or responsibility and ethics. I think I might have not got that wrong a little bit, but because the FAIR principles actually, while very important, very complex to implement and costly, but important, don't actually cover some of the things. So they are, I think, should always be coming together, in the future, FAIR and CARE. And there are others, by the way, but I'll stop with the CARE.
Nick, Tina, anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, I was thinking that, I mean, if we think about FAIR principles and how they are implemented and not implemented and how difficult it is, we start quite late in the scientist's career to think about them. we start perhaps in the first course in the university to talk about how you need to take care of your data and so forth. Not always that either. It may come only when you are in the doctoral degree or doing some serious research already. So what we need to pay attention is that children already at school are aware how to take care of their data and how to read data. And that is the way how we can make the change.
Very good. Okay.
I mean, those principles are required, and they will evolve. I'm pretty sure about that, because things, as I said before, I mean, are just going, I mean, so quickly right now. And we talked about trust. I think that what is important also is to strengthen our confidence in those digital technologies, not only AI. And in order to max out, I would say, the positive impacts, and also minimize the negative repercussions. And I'll give you just an example of, I would say, principles that is very important, and this is discussion that we're having right now in Canada, is the principle of transparency. And that basically says that, it states that anyone should have the right to be informed explicitly that AI is interacting with him or her. That's very important, because it's not always obvious.
Okay. Beyond that, you referenced Montreal earlier in the discussion, and yeah, I mean, it is one of the world's leading hubs, right? It's cross-disciplinary, it's cross-sector, it's a genuine ecosystem which has been developed carefully over the last 10, 12, 15 years. But the role of individual research organizations in building public trust, right, and confidence in AI, its development and its application, is this a responsibility that lies with Polytechnique as an institution, or can you genuinely build it up to a systems level, to the ecosystem, to the community? I mean, we have regulation, the AI Act, Data Act, and so forth, and we have data principles and voluntary guidelines, but how do you think about this as a leading technological university?
It's a collective effort. Everybody should contribute. And the first thing that comes to mind is the importance of training. So I'm part of a technological university, so I mean, our mission is pretty simple. I mean, our mission consists of training engineers, scientists, so that they are well equipped, to address, societal issues. And I think AI, cybersecurity, and so forth are just examples. And I think also that we should not focus only on students. I think all citizens, organizations, and also public servants and governments should be trained adequately, and adequately depends on the role those different people will play later on, about AI and other digital technologies, what those technologies entail, and so that they are in a better position to understand what the limitations are, okay? And so that they can understand also the multiple issues related to the development and use of AI technologies. So we do have a role to play. It's our responsibility, and when I say our responsibility, we're part of it, and our role is not to slow down the pace of technological innovation. We wouldn't be able to do that. Not possible. So instead, I think that we must provide citizens, okay, with the right set of skills, so that they can actually use AI, I would say, efficiently. And I used the word or the expression augmented intelligence yesterday afternoon, because I don't like artificial intelligence. I don't like the word artificial. I think that AI should play an assistive role, and it should be designed to enhance human intelligence, not to replace it. And then for that to happen, and for that to be efficient, and that to be such that at the end of the day, progress is possible, social progress is possible. A set of competencies, a skill set is needed, and Patrick Kramer mentioned the importance of critical thinking this morning. That's part of it. There's also judgment. There's also social perceptiveness. And so social perceptiveness is the skill that is very important because it helps us recognize and eventually react and respond to cues given by other humans in very specific situations. This is something that AI cannot do right now efficiently. Okay? And this actually brings me to talk about the mission of EVADO, l'Institut de valorisation de la recherche in Montreal. So it's I'm going to translate there. I'm going to try. So it's Big Data Mining Institute. Okay, and our role, the mission of EVADO, when we're part of it, University of Montreal is part of it, McGill is part of it, and other stakeholders from the industry and some governmental bodies are part of it. And once again, the role of EVADO is really to, of course, it's an interdisciplinary, cross-sectoral. And I say interdisciplinary, I would dare say transdisciplinary, because you have people, you have scientists, you have engineers, you have people from social sciences and humanities. And the role is really to actually do cross-sectoral research, but also training and knowledge mobilization, KM. And it's a consortium, and I'd like to tell you that our role is, of course, to develop and promote technologies, but 3 R's. Robust, so we want to develop robust AI-based technologies, like the ones that are used on aircrafts, for example, and critical systems. I think I don't have to give you any examples about the importance of that. Responsible AI, we talked about that. We're talking about that during this panel, and also reasoning AI. So how can you devise an AI model that will draw conclusions based on data, and the conclusions would be similar to the conclusion that would be drawn by humans? This is called reasoning AI, and it's a research topic right now. So it's really, you know, I would say the importance of training once again. And depending on whether you're a PhD student, a public servant, or even a worker in the workplace that needs upskilling, so then, of course, we have a role to play collectively.
Okay.
And
fantastic. Thank you.
There you go.
That's great. So I'm going to open the floor for questions in a couple of minutes, but I'd just like to now turn to Tina, because, I mean, CSC has this very unusual profile as well, right? I mean, you're home to the Lumi supercomputer. You're owned by the government and by the leading universities in Finland. You have a research, big data, you have education responsibilities in your portfolio. So on this question about skills and sort of preparing the next generation for the future of conducting research and using research to inform education and policy in this new digital era, how do you see these boundaries moving? How do you plan for the future in these critical areas?
I can't agree more than what François already said, that it's important that we educate all population, not only those students that happen to come to the universities, and because AI is not a tool, and AI is based on data, and data is everywhere nowadays. So everybody needs to be capable of reading data, analyzing it, and in whatever the context is where people are living. But reading data, the ability to read data correctly, I mean, this kind of, even though we are now talking about digital technologies and digital era, we really should go back to ancient Greek type of philosophers, their thinking, how they argumented, how they thought critically, how they constructively criticized each other. So this type of skills are very important nowadays, so that we can really judge what is true and what is not true, and that is a citizen skill that should be everywhere. Then another thing, if we think about our education system, higher education system, then of course we have this kind of structures at least in Finland, I suppose, or everywhere else, where institutional and educational conditions are such that they tend to inhibit interdisciplinarity and knowledge integration. And it's important when we are educating and training AI systems, for example, it's important that they are not biased, they are not educated by certain type of data only. So having these kind of people who know more than or beyond the area that are their specificity, that is important, so that we can create such data sets that are possible to then feed to these models and make them better, working better. For example, if we have these kind of peer reviewing systems that are based on AI systems that are not properly trained, it may be that we lose some interruptive or disruptive innovations because they just don't recognize them.
Yes, Livio.
Just to add, because I think Tina was overly modest, I wanted to highlight one of Finland's gifts to the world, which is the Fundamentals of AI, the course that's now in the public.
Oh, yes.
And that really went so far in educating the global population that so we have Nokia and Fundamentals of AI.
Yeah, and we are actually offering that beyond Finland.
I
so
know, yes.
welcome, welcome to take the course. It's free.
Wonderful. Okay, so plenty to get your heads around, right? From the systems to the policy challenges, the data reliability, trust, skills, etc. Who's got a comment or a question that they'd like to share? Okay, we have two at the front. Let's take these first two, and then we'll have Thomas and any others afterwards.
Hi, I'm Denise Anaidin from Eureka. I was really fascinated by the example from Montreal, and I really wanted to bring companies into this, because again, science no longer happens just in academia. And how do you bring industry into these discussions, and not just the big players, the global players, but also SMEs? Because I mean, in Europe, 99% of businesses are SMEs. How do you bring them along? Because this is an opportunity for diffusion of excellent science into the economy, but there's also an opportunity for scale up and for growth and for new economic models. But how do you bring them into this?
Okay, fantastic, Denita. So, second question, and then we'll turn to the panel to answer.
Thank you. Marta Agostinho, EU Life Alliance of Independent Research Institutes in the Life Sciences across Europe. I have a very simple question. Thanks a lot for this discussion. I feel so humbled in this conversation. And my question to you is, if you had one thing that FP10 should have to help us here, what would be that one thing?
Okay, great question. So we have stewardship of science, top priority for FP10, and we have how to bring SMEs along in this journey of rethinking the way we manage the impact of science on society. So who'd like to go first? Nick. Off you go.
The first question about how to bring companies in. So I mentioned the role that we have as an analytics provider as well, in addition to sort of the publishing history. And increasingly, you'll be aware of the movement to assess beyond how much has been published, how often has it been cited, but look at the culture of institutions and also the impact of institutions. Increasingly, we're seeing, so Francois talked about the role of Montreal. You were fascinated, so was I. But other universities are looking to be able to measure how much are they creating SMEs and how much are they engaging SMEs. So we're working with universities to broaden indicators, so we're actually helping them gather information about who have they trained, where have they gone, What have they created companies? How much impact has been created by the companies? So in other words, the evaluation system, I think, is evolving to incorporate exactly the kind of activity and to stimulate and reward the kind of activity that I think you're talking about. Are we doing them? Am I answering the second question?
No,
too,
I think actually
we'll
we
come
might
back to
save
that one?
Marta's question for the end, and that's going to be the
Okay.
wrap-up, right?
Okay.
The bullet point, that'll be the closing. So, any further comments on the company or the industry side? Because there's a second dimension, which isn't just on the growth and the use of these new technologies for commercial development, but it's also the alignment with responsibility, reliability, transparency, trust. I think about the ChatGPT model and the big tech companies being obliged to declare a certain amount of what they were doing, and OpenAI as the SME or the startup not. So it can go both ways. But anyway, Livia, I think you wanted to offer something on this.
OpenAI as an SME, I don't think it works. Startup, yes, but SME,
Well.
they're beyond that. But I'd also like to focus on the first question, because the second one, I would have been a conflict of interest if I made wish list for FP10. My boss in the closing session will answer that question. So, but for companies and SMEs, that's really something that we, as a public funder, are very active on. So I may have given the wrong impression that we're only reflecting about things, but we're actually already doing a lot. Just 3 weeks ago, the European Commission had this initiative to open up access for startups, responsible startups, to supercomputing infrastructure to run AI models. So this is sort of an active role of facilitating access to resources for these companies. We also are about to publish guidelines for the responsible use of generative AI in science, and that reflects also on the private sector. And we've drafted these guidelines together with stakeholders, so really with the representatives of research organizations, but also companies. And the last thing that we do actually links to the other question, that's funding. We have committed to fund a lot more applications of AI in science through the framework program, which has as a criterion collaborations with SMEs, universities. So we're bringing them along, and not just the big companies, but also SMEs. You sort of get extra points if you're an SME in these collaborations. So that's our way that's our carrot, if you will, to bring them along. Thanks.
Further thoughts? Hilary, you first?
Yeah, from our perspective, we probably have more interaction with the larger organizations. With the small, so traditionally research is a little slower, and somebody said in one of the sessions earlier that speed was a really important component. We have a mantra in RDA that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that is a little bit obviously challenging for SMEs. They don't have the same time and resources as larger organizations. We see the involvement in them. I think one thing that would really help is standards would help a lot, particularly in certain areas. The Research Data Alliance openly follows a standards process. The Internet Engineering Task Force, we were set up based on that, but made a declaration a couple of years ago that we are not a standards issuing body, and we are now thinking that as nobody else is doing it, maybe we should, because they are really important, and it's not the whole piece of the puzzle, but a little bit of help, and it would also help, I think, SMEs. And the other thing, of course, is that I really believe that this openness and communicating as much as possible and being open and transparent does reduce the duplication of efforts, and which is what we were set up also to do. And for SMEs, that's really important because they just don't have the capacity, right, and the resources to be investing time in that. So,
Francois, did you want to add one thing on the?
I'd like to maybe answer your question very quickly. I mean, why it worked out? It's because, I mean, all stakeholders were part of it right from the start. So we co-constructed. We actually developed the program, the research program, with the companies. Okay, we didn't actually invite companies to join us after. So they were like part of a living lab. So everybody was around the same table, and we were discussing about the research program, what we should do. And one thing I'd like to add also is that why it's been successful so far. It relied upon 50 years of collaboration between academia and the industry in the field of operations research, automatic decision-making algorithms, and of course AI. So it was like a collective effort. And right from the start, there were 100 different companies involved, including SMEs. And so that's why actually everybody could, it was a win-win thing, because the hub actually made it possible for everybody to actually find something of interest with regards to AI. And if you look at AI 5 or 6 years ago and AI right now, it's two different things, okay? We've reached a point where we want to industrialize AI now, whereas 5 years ago, we didn't have a clue what we were going to do with it. So I think it hasn't come of age, I wouldn't say that, because there are pitfalls that should be avoided, of course, and this will take some time. But I think we are at the next level right now, and I think that there are examples right now that show that things will just evolve exponentially.
Super. Okay, we had a couple more questions. Actually, I think we have 3. So, Elizabeth, did you want to ask? Thomas, and then the gentleman at the back.
Hi, excuse me, Elizabeth Crossick from RELX. I have a comment and a question. I think you, Francois, made the point, and others have made it too, about the importance of transparency when you interact with a generative AI model or an AI model. And I would say yes, but it's use case specific. It's important for, not for fraud detection or crime detection. So that's just an observation. Question though, AI Act itself. And Hilary, you mentioned tick boxes in another context, but how do we make sure, you mentioned in open science, I'm thinking about the AI Act, how do we make sure that responsible AI through the AI Act is not just another set of compliance and box ticking activities? So what is it that we think we need to implement the Act in a way that we co-create and foster the right environment?
Okay, great question. I think we had 2 more. First, Thomas Jørgensen, EUA.
Yeah, many thanks, from the European University Association. So I just want to say, I'm all for the new blueprint, and I think it will be revolutionary. I'm completely in that camp, no yes or no. But I'm worried about the policy framework, because I have the fear, it's not necessarily grounded, that we're sort of hitting the wall of what we can do with the policy framework as it is. Because we need the data, we need the compute, we need the skills. For the data, we do have the European data strategy, but it's still, the jury is still out. We don't have well-working interoperable data spaces, and as we heard, not in research either. For the infrastructure, yeah, we have the joint HPC undertakings, but that's dependent on collaboration with the member states. And for the skills, there's not a lot the Commission can do. So if you, as I, believe that we need to have large-scale solutions to automated research very soon, because otherwise somebody else will do it, is the EU geared to make that response if we see this as sort of a major, possibly a major crisis? Or do we have to make do with tacking extra money in Horizon that already tacked for climate or critical technologies or something else?
Okay, thank you. And then one final question, back corner of the room.
I will follow suit to him. I want to know from the Commission in which fields worldwide we are the best ones using artificial intelligence, and what we have to do, in their point of view, to kick the others out. Just let me bring an example. European aircraft industry, we are leading worldwide. Boeing is coming down and others. So give us the answers, what have we to do to become the best worldwide? Thanks a lot.
Okay, we'll frame that as a question rather than a demand. But Livy, maybe you want to take these 2 questions first, and then we'll come to the broader question on co-creation and the policy framework later. So, over to you.
Maybe I start with the last one, not necessarily on the fields, but something that the University Alliance also mentioned, which is that if we don't do it, others will. We carried out a bibliometric analysis looking at scientific papers. We've really added a lot of quality checks, also looking at the top 1% most cited ones. basically the entirety of the volume of papers using AI and taking out computer science. That means we sort of found a proxy for applications of AI in science. I don't know the figures for Canada, but I looked at the figures for the US and the EU. The data we have stops in 2022, and the EU was slightly above the US, and then China is more than the two of them put together. So we talked to some of the China experts who explained to us that they see it as a way of leapfrogging to the top of scientific excellence rather than building the ecosystems that took us 50 years. We heard they want to do it in far less. So really, that's an imperative for us to do it. In terms of the question of whether we are well equipped to do it or not, I think we're getting there. If anything, the European Union learns from crises and we come out stronger. I would hope we wouldn't need crisis to get better, but that seems to be the case. And the AI Act, there's a very important exemption for this conversation for research and innovation. That was sort of confirmed throughout the negotiations, that research and innovation is exempt from its application, but there are ways in which the application will impact our community. All of this is interrelated. It will come into force 2 years from now, but already we're working with companies who have the AI Pact. So early adoption, the access to infrastructures for startups that I mentioned is for companies that commit to apply the AI Act already now. And we work globally through the G7, for instance, on ways of getting the community to apply it before. So there's a very strong legal and regulatory frame for it. But because of the nature of the fast-evolving technology itself, we are looking at innovative ways to accelerate that and then build the community, build the practices, try to make its application immediate. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Liviu. Now, on Elizabeth's question, the AI Act and balance between control and innovation, how do we co-create, how do we foster new applications, new uses of AI for the benefit of science and the benefit of society? Hilary, you were name dropped, so you could go first.
Well, I already raised the problem about open science, and how are we box checking and checking boxes there. I'm not sure I have the magic answer for it, but we definitely need, so it goes back to expertise, doesn't it? And I mean, I don't know if the European Union or European Commission outsources this or they get another agency, but I think it really needs to be taken into serious consideration because it's public funding. So when we talk about public funding, we should be, it should not just be box ticking. I believe. The co-creation, but again, there are things that the whole ecosystem, so I like to think about the multi-stakeholders. It's not only the European Union's and European Commission's problem, right? Just because, we all have to take our role in it. So I think that the co-creation that Elizabeth suggests is, a good model. We have just heard of different ones, so I know in the past in Europe we've had them. No, some have been more successful than others, but you need to look at the context and the different partnerships. But I believe that, one of the ways forward is to do that, yes. But you need the technology, the skills, the standards. You need the whole pot of all the stakeholders playing their role. Yeah.
Fantastic. Now, Nick, Tina, Francois, any quick comments on this question of the co-creation, the fostering? And then we're going to come to Marta's question for the final takeaway.
So, first of all, we have similar, I would say, rules and laws in Canada. There's law C27 right now. What we would need to ensure is that when you compare, those different sets of rules, that they actually are compatible up to a certain point. That would make sense. Another thing also that is needed, and I agree with you that we need talent. That's very important. One thing that we haven't talked about yet is also the need. I don't know about the situation in Europe. I can tell you about the situation in North America. We need compute power. Okay, we need GPUs, and I'll just give you an example. And I don't want to focus too much on ChatGPT, but we could talk about Gemini, and that would probably be the same numbers. To train ChatGPT, okay, just the training of ChatGPT, okay, requires 1,000 dedicated access to 1,000 GPUs for more than 1 month. One step of training. And things will increase in terms of, I would say, requirements. So that's also part of the equation, I think. And this applies to Canada, but this applies to any country or any continent.
Okay, very quickly, Nick or Tina, anything further to add to Elizabeth's question? Yes, Tina.
I can't agree more that we need computing power and especially GPUs, because that is the machinery how AI is generating. But at Europe we are in a quite good position because we have your HPC program, joint undertaking, and they are the machines that are powerful enough to do this. So we could make sure that people are really using the investments that has been done already and are still going on at Europe, so that we have these people who are using these machines that we are now just building.
Yep. Liviu, very quickly, then we're doing the one bullet point, and then we're done.
Just a quick point on GPUs. I think, again, Herman Hauser in the morning talked about ARM being the first British company to go over 100 billion. It was because NVIDIA, which also saw its stock go through the roof, agreed to use ARM architecture to complement their GPUs going forward. So really, this is a sort of global market. And the supercomputing power that we have in the EU with the high-performance computing is going to be upgraded with GPUs. That's also part of this commission strategy announced 3 weeks ago. We're going to build AI factories around to build communities also with scientists and the GPUs, because if the GPUs are just sitting on the rack by themselves, they don't do much good. You need the brains to access them and the companies to apply.
Okay, fantastic. Now, last question from Marta. We're going to start with you, Tina, and work our way back. Stewardship of Science, new blueprint, one thing for for FP10. It's the one thing you would love to see.
I would like to see that FP10 would be coupled with the other programs, so that there would be synergies with other programs that are taking care of digital and education, so that we would have a proper context.
Integrated policy making, as
exactly.
Robert Jan Smits referred to earlier. Okay,
Exactly.
Thank you. Hillary.
I would say global. I would say open to the world in whatever measure that needs to take place to safeguard Europe, etc. But I think the global aspect is really, really important.
Super. Nick.
I preface by saying there's enormous value to be created in this space. So how does FP10 incentivize ethical value creation? I think it's through guidelines and particularly transparency, so that, for example, if you are if you're helping create clean content, so it's not garbage in, garbage out, that value doesn't accrue to people who are just taking that content. And similarly, if there are bad actors, how do you ensure there is transparency of that? So that essentially the role of FP10 can be to guide towards ethical value creation as opposed to exploitation.
Excellent. Francois, last word.
Global in certain areas. Yeah, I agree.
Global in certain areas.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll let the debate begin about which ones those are. Exactly. Okay, well, it's time for coffee. 4:15 is the final plenary, but please join me in thanking Francois, Nick, Hillary, Liviu, and Tina for a wonderful discussion. Thank you.